Show.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to episode 139 of the 580 Show. I'm joined this week. We got a really good episode. We'll talk about everything. We'll go through what we're gonna talk about, but really good episode. I'm joined by two phenomenal strength athletes, CJ Krause and Tom Mannion. Welcome to the show, boys. That's for coming.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me. So, I would. CJ is definitely phenomenal. I'm just a bit part specialist who has a few things he's good at, but yeah, I'm happy just to be hanging around and being competitive in my little niche into my early 40s. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's all
incredible
good.
too. And I mean, so people know you're hopping on this podcast at 1 a.m. your time. So we appreciate your time, man. I appreciate your willingness to come on.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good. Well,
don't sell yourself short.
Honestly, yeah,
uh, just
we'll talk about Tom and all in his accomplishments as well. I'm sure as we go, but and CJ's as well. And but I like to do episodes like this where we have guests on where I see fit. And this week I thought you guys were perfect. You both were a little outspoken on stuff, and you both have history cutting to 80 kgs, right? And
yeah,
so I just
Yep.
thought this was a really good panel. And so the topic this week was um two things in strongman. There's no punishment for not making weight. At the whole spectrum, right? The lowest level shows, you show up for a local show, you don't make weight, you bump up to the highest level show, what we're seeing this weekend, right?
yeah.
And the last time I mentioned Ben Donut on here, the whole country of France freaking was in my DM sending me stuff I didn't understand, threatening me. So we're just talking about it. This is
Well, we'll
this is
see what
my
happens this
opinion.
time.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
gonna
want to
be.
I
I
want to
don't think
preface
it'll be
like
any better this time. So,
yeah, right. I want to preface and just say, like I'm not trying to come off as like a hater or, run anyone through the mud or anything. We're just we're guys that like strongman, and when you like something, you're passionate about it, which is great, and you want to talk about it. So, you know,
yeah, sure.
there's no punishment. And then another thing was in online qualifiers, and I want to talk about that too, being within a certain percentage, stuff like that, because you say go viral. I say something went viral in strongman. You remember how small our little niche is, but it went viral within our own little world. Those two topics. So, um, let's start off with not making weight. Like, what do you guys can go in any order, CJ or Tom first, but like not making weight at a high level show. It's happened to CJ before. It's happened to you at the Arnold, right? Like,
Yep.
um, so you're as qualified as it comes to talk about it. But what do you guys think? Like, what should happen? What do you think of what's going on with all this stuff? Talk about it a little bit.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing I think is that there is no ramifications for it. At the local level, I'm not sure there needs to be much, though, in all reality, because you're not really taking someone's spot. You're not vying for anything. For something that's qualified for, especially when there's a limited number of spaces, I believe there should be some kind of penalty. Like, that's one of the big things. Like, during the Arnold last 2 years ago, something like that, last year, I was trying to get down to 80 kilo, and my cut wasn't going the right way because of medical reasons, and I just bumped up to 105, which like I knew I wasn't going to win that one, but there was no 90 class on that. But like I did everything I could, like medically, I had to cut myself off for that one. That's when I was not as good at cutting, and that's the only time I've ever missed at a high level show. But I learned from that. And I was like, the biggest thing I think is like you have to be remorseful when that happens. You have to kind of like reflect on it. I haven't seen too much of that from some of these athletes, but I think when it comes to like, there's no penalty for it is the big thing. Local levels, I don't see the biggest deal with that because there's no prize money. There's nothing on the line. Maybe an invite, you still have to earn it at the next level. But like for a nationals or for like something that be qualified for, or for something that like people earn their spots and you wouldn't have, like I probably should not have been allowed to compete at the 105s, like in all reality. But
Right.
obviously, an athlete's going to take every opportunity that they can. Like you can't blame the athlete for taking the
You're
opportunity.
already in Columbus, right? Like you're gonna if they
Yeah,
say you can compete, I get it. And
yeah,
I remember how bummed you were about it and remorseful and apologetic and stuff like that. Not like it really changes anything, but it's the human side of the athlete. And I do agree with you with the local level, dude, because you could sign up for a local show 9 months before and you bump up from 80 to 90. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think what we're talking about is like nationals and higher,
hmm
to be
Well,
honest.
if I want to throw like my full opinion, I've thought about this a lot, like the ramifications of it. I think Chaos did a very good job of one of the athletes that was not making weight. They allowed him to still compete, so he still trained for the show, still did things, but he had to go first in every event, and his points didn't count. He couldn't affect anybody, couldn't do anything, but he was able to showcase himself as an athlete. I thought that was a fair way to go about it. So I think that could be like a first offense. Like you still can do the show if you choose to, but you cannot affect another athlete on that one. I think second offense should be a suspension. Like you can't compete in this weight class for X amount of time. And third, you should just be done with that class. You're not allowed to compete for them again. And like, yeah, I think that's the most fair way to do it, in my opinion. That's something I've thought about.
Right. And I want to let Tom talk about it too, but it's a really good point when you start talking about suspensions and stuff, because I think it may sound silly to some people, but when you want to grow strongman and make it bigger and bigger, you need to start treating it like athletes, right? Where there are ramifications. If an MLB player cheats, he gets suspended, he pays a fine, stuff like that. So it may sound silly to some people, like we're overreacting, but I think it's a really good point. As the sport grows, I remember when Clash started, they had a policy. I don't know if Pro Strongman League still has it, but if you missed
Same
weight,
policy.
yeah, if you missed weight, it was a zero tolerance policy where you weren't invited back to that. You weren't allowed to compete at that.
You're
Whatever.
not allowed to compete in that class again if you miss weight at one Clash or Pro Strongman League show. That is black and white the rules for that. And that's an aggressive way to do it, but it's a way to treat people like professionals. We want to bring this sport to the next level, and it is growing, and we want to be taken seriously. We need to start acting like actual athletes and have ramifications for our circumstances that happen, good, bad, ugly. And like I said, I take full responsibility for what happened to me, and I don't think I should have been allowed to. But again, I'm an athlete. I don't blame for taking an opportunity either.
Yeah. And it's you said it earlier, but you go when you look at it, you're taking a spot from someone else, especially at a show like Clash or Chaos. Like if one of the online guys, or an invite doesn't make weight, that was a spot that could have potentially been for someone else. That's another
Especially
athlete.
with especially with limited availability. When they're inviting X amount of athletes, there's not an unlimited source. And especially a lot of these shows, like the major shows, like you don't pay to compete for Pro Strongman League. We're not paying them to enter that, or Clash Love last year, whatever. We didn't pay, so we are, and we could win money. So that's like as professional as it gets. So you have to be expect to be treated and acted of the sort. I'm certain that these guys probably didn't pay to do OS Europes, or if they did, I don't know. But
Right.
either way, like
Yeah.
they limited the spots to 20 or something like that. They invited 20 guys. The 21st, 22nd, 23rd were probably ready 6 weeks ago to start doing their training, get ready for it. But you took someone's spot, so there needs to be
100%.
some kind of ramification, in my opinion.
Tom, what's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, me and CJ talked a little bit about this. We spoke for a wee while in London while I was there for Static Monsters. We pretty much see eye to eye on most things here. To summarize my viewpoint on it, and again, I've thought about this a lot. Small shows up to a certain level, fine. It doesn't really matter, especially if there's no real prize money on the line, if there's no qualification spot going into a big comp or what have you. I think the problem with allowing someone to move up a weight class, there's 2 or 3 big problems where someone can look to gain an advantage. And I'd thought of this, but the first person to post it publicly was Luke Davis, saying you could do the qualifying weights for X division and then go there being what they're saying now, that you don't even really have to prove what body weight you are in the off season, basically, when you're doing these qualifiers. So I can be 98 kilos and be like, oh, I did X deadlift, X farmers, and X overhead, right? So I can do those qualifying numbers and then either cut down or not. Let's just say I pretend I'm doing the 80 class, because I believe there's a couple of people had no intention of making the weight class several weeks out. It was clear to both me and CJ that one person in particular had no chance of making weight. I called it a couple of weeks ago. So they're then going there, knowing they're going to move up, right? Even a couple of days before, still pretending in my eyes that they're going to do the class that they're supposed to be doing, but they have no intention of doing it. And it's not the first time this has happened either. So, and imagine this scenario where take the under 64 and the under 73 women. Now, what I was seeing, the 73s would be a bit of a weaker class at Europe. So say you're number 2 or number 3 girl, right, in the 64s, you're like, Knickers, I'm not going against Kate Connolly and Rhiannon. I'm just going to miss weight and then move up. Do you get what I mean? Having only done the qualifier, there's so many ways that you could abuse it. So, and the thing is as well, if you know you can move up, especially if we're doing a big cut, and we'll get to what I consider a big cut in a bit. It's a lot bigger than what some people are, saying X amount is a cut. I'd be like, yeah, hold my beer. I'm not even getting started yet when they're saying that's a big weight cut. If you know you can move up a class, it's very, very easy to just be like, oh, Nick is to this, I can always move up. Whereas if you know you're out, you're going to keep cutting as long as it's, safe to do so. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's no security. There's a security
pro
blanket.
show, like pro show, Europeans, worlds in these recognized feds. Just no, I don't think. I do like the special event show, amazing show by the way that Rhiannon and Luke put on. The Chaos 90s is probably is it the best show ever held? Maybe. I think so, and I include all the heavyweight stuff in that as well. The level, the way it was run, the presentation, everything. It's not the worst thing to let your man move up and showcase his stuff. But imagine then he beats everybody, even though his stuff doesn't count. Do you know what I mean? You're then going to take away from, you're just setting up scenarios where it's not going to look good. I just think, no, you don't get to compete. So I'll give you a little scenario here of where I didn't miss weight because it was essentially, it was like a record breakers day. It was done in Andy Black's gym at the time. It's in the middle of nowhere in Scotland. I don't know if you've heard about this place. I did this comp on like a week's notice because I was supposed to go to Italy and go against the Italian champion and they bought my plane tickets. They bought me a villa for me and my young protege at the time, a girl who was training. We were going to go out there, lift, and then they changed the COVID rules the day before our flight, right? So I couldn't go. Rhiannon, who was my coach at the time, she found an alternate event for me, Andy Black's event, and ended up getting a hotel room in a B&B in a pub. And of course, I rung them up. I'm like, have you got hot water? Because there's no sauna. I'm like, have you got hot water? I get there, the hot water runs out after one bath, right? So now I'm over 90 kilos still with about 10 hours to weigh in. And normally that's the kind of cut I can do by alternating like hot baths and heat blankets and stuff like that. I ended up taking, I think it took me 17 hours from that point. I was filling the bath up with a 500 ml kettle and my rice cooker, and I made weight. But I didn't then have the time to refeed correctly. And by the time I think it was the record was like 337 at the time. I tried 338 and got it to my knees, but I wasn't quite back at 100%. But that's the closest I've ever come to missing weight. So people talk about like, oh, sauna problem and this problem and that. Try cutting 10 kilos in the middle of nowhere with a travel kettle and a rice cooker, because that's what I did. So people whinging about 10% weight cuts. I do 13, 14, 15% in 10 days. So I'm not saying it's particularly healthy, but it can be done. And that's part of the big edge I had when I was competing at 80. Not only could I do the cut, I could actually get back up and retain 98, 99% of my strength. So, but I just draw a line in the sand and say these major comps, no, you're not lifting. And it'd cut all this crap out, like at least 90% of it anyway. I guarantee you'd have a lot less people missing weight. So,
Right. Yeah. And I think as we see comps grow where it's just a certain weight class available, like CJ, you just competed at Chaos, right? As the 90s. So if you miss weight, you don't have that security blanket to move up to the 105s. You know what I mean? So I think as we see more shows like that, but then we have OSG where you have that security blanket. And obviously, I think there's no I don't think we're being too secret about this was kind of sparked by Ben Donen, right? Who's a champion he won Clash of the 80s, he won OSG 80s. The incredible thing about Ben is that he is such an insanely strong dude. And I got to
Yeah.
meet him at the Arnold. It is undeniable that he is in that top percent of strength athletes. And it's incredible to watch him. Even this weekend, whether he was planning to make 80s or not, he's on the podium right now after one day at Europe's in the 90s.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, he was my teammate for a little while under Tom Hibbert. When he started to improve there, it was like, I think he failed a 330 deadlift in December of 2021. That's how good he's got so quick. He's fearless, brutally strong, technically proficient, has bravado for days, showman. Like, how can you not want to like and root for this guy? But let's just say there are problems, and that's putting it lightly. This goes. I mean, I don't know how much. Do you want me to go into this now before we?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So I've basically put that I am not a Ben Donin hater as such. I'm a fan. Like, it was me and him. We were supposed to go head to head for the world record. He had the chance to do it at the Arnold Europe, but it ended up being me and Rich Molnar. He says, "Oh, I'm going to do it in my gym like a week later," but it was in dollars. It was like over $3,000 if you break the record there. So already I'm like, what? Why wouldn't you? Do you know what I mean? It's a €100 Ryanair flight from France to London, and it's already in my head. I'm like, why is he not wanting to come over? So, but me and Rich both missed. That wasn't I don't know how much you know about that comp, but that wasn't the best. That wasn't the best comp. We weren't given the best shot at it, shall we say? But I've already spoke about that. Probably I'm not going to go into that. So then I think it was either 10 days or 2 weeks later, he pulls, and I think his best lift in training was a missed 340 double, like a hitched 340. He went for a second rep and missed it, and then he'd even been training throughout the week. Like, if you're doing a big weight cut, pretty much 5 to 6 days out, you have to stop training because your electrolytes are all out of whack and you're starting to decarb. Like, you'll end up ripping something. So you might do a speed day like 5 days out and then a very light workout 3 days out. But he's throwing 90 kilo dumbbells around and doing all kinds of shit. And I'm like, what is he doing? Is he doing this comp, or is he just going to do it at 90? Then he goes and pulls 340 like a speed rep for the world record, 350 at RPE 9, and then pulls 360. And I was like, wow, just all I could do was tip my hat. I wasn't at all suspicious at this stage that like anything was going on. But you have to look at the entirety of what's happened since going back to, it's pretty much a year. He won the Clash the third week of August, and you've already talked about how he showed up at like 84 and then was given another 8 hours to make weight.
I was at that show, and it was at my actual gym. So basically, he was the last one to weigh in, like the last one. Like, I was probably like, I weighed in like an hour after weigh-in.
It's a pro show for thousands of dollars, right? Is there a weigh-in time, or is there a weigh-in time?
I mean, they allowed him to go to rules meeting with it. They pushed it farther back, which shows have been known to do. Yeah. But he came in for a second attempt to weigh in, from what I've heard. It was around like 83, 84 kilos. They told him to go make weight. He comes back like 6 hours later. He makes it barely. He is getting three IVs at least at rules meeting while it's all going on.
That's how long it would take. Those last 3-4 kilos can take if it's a 12-13% cut. Yep. Yeah. Now, okay, so it's pretty much there's one or two dissenting opinions I've heard that it's a bit fishy whether he did. I'm fully willing to take your word. There's a couple of the lads have said, yeah, he was at death's door, he made 80. Fine, right. The problem is he is at least 5 or 6 kilos bigger than that now. I've seen the size of him. He was out angling you. He was the size of John Hack, who at the minute is 215, right, by his own admission. If you go by the timeline, the next thing he did the Clash in August. He did deadlift world record middle of October. But then within 3 weeks, it was 2.5, 3 weeks, he's doing OSG. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm like,
yeah. And to kind of elaborate on this too,
well above 90. So I'm like, did you really do a massive dirty cut for that? And then you're doing it again for Worlds? Because he didn't weigh in for Worlds, did he? It was a video. Right.
So it was a video weigh-in, and kind of like
Yeah.
elaborate more on the. I was supposed to go for a deadlift world record with you guys, but like
Yeah.
I know I can't cut twice that much. But my focus was
Yeah.
OSG. So the fact that like he did that was like, it raised some red flags to me. But at that point, I wasn't like, oh, whatever. Maybe he just has, maybe he sits lighter or whatever, etc. But yeah,
But he's not sitting like that. It's obvious how big
not
he is.
anymore.
He's got overhangs on his quads. He's almost double muscle all over his chest and shoulders. And he's not
for
that
sure.
small. He's 5'8". So he's 95 walking around.
Oh, I think he's like 95, 96. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the timeline continues.
Yeah,
I'll give him the credit. I'll give him the credit that he made weight at OSG, right? But video weighing, just
but you do have to preface by saying he made weight, all within rules of OSG, because I believe they run a tight ship and whatever. But when
have you seen his video weighing video? Have you seen his video weighing that he put up? It's a joke.
I did not see it.
It's a joke.
So,
like
the video weigh-ins for OSG, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but like they weren't as looked over as I believe they should have, in my opinion.
It's an honor system.
Because I posted mine online, so there's no scrutiny. If you guys remember that, like the second I made weight, I posted an exact video of me filming myself from all angles, everything in the shot.
The scales have to be shown to be on with a calibrated plate or something, and then you have to be videoed where it shows no one's touching you or you're not touching anything, and then it zooms in on the scale. And the scale can't be jumping around like crazy. Like when it gets on, it's going to go duh, 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 and it's going to settle, right? If you're 80-ish, right, it's not going to go 73 and then slowly tick up to 80 over about 5 or 6 seconds. Yeah. So the only video he's ever put up in the past year, and it was in response to kind of getting called out for the actual world record, where he missed weight at the Arnold amateur, and then 2 weeks later, under 80 world record in my own gym. And then he puts up a video, wasn't an official weigh-in, but a video where he's kind of cropped out, he's hunched over, and the scale takes about 5 or 6 seconds to settle from 73 to 80. He's either being reverse banded or held up from behind. It's so obvious.
Now, the video also, like, to get speculation, the video also appeared like
and he was full of water. Later. He had a tummy.
Yeah.
It was full of water.
It was in response to our podcast. We got tagged.
I'm sorry, but if there's no argument that was a fake, that's a fake video. It's fake. He's full. His legs are thick. He has a tummy. He's hunched over. The scale takes about 5 or 6 seconds to settle, and he was over, and he was under by 0.4. So I'm set like I'm just saying, nah, I'm just not having it. Especially so you're gonna make weight in your own gym 2 weeks after the second biggest show of the year. You're gonna miss by 5, and then you're gonna be. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it at all. Right. The video's terrible. If you haven't seen the video, I'll send you it. Yeah. Because it got deleted. It got put up and then deleted. I screen recorded it.
I think it was on a story when he posted it, and he didn't even post it.
Yeah.
It just adds more to the speculation. Like, Tom, like I said, you've done massive cuts. I've done massive cuts. I've done like 11, 12% cuts. Yeah. You are a skeleton. Like, I post like, I showed you my video, my post.
You look like a vampire's had a go at you, basically, is what you look like.
Yeah. Everything, your legs, your abs.
Your veins actually stick out because your blood is viscous and your skin is so tight. They're like, all you had to do was just look at his leg and it's thick and it's full and it's like, bro, you're like 95 in that video.
Everyone
like, he's
knows
not even 90.
Everyone,
your eyes are sunken back.
For him to put that video up was just so disrespectful. So basically, I mean, I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit, right? What haven't I touched on? So
can I add context just to our average strongman listener that's listening? The reason for World's Strongest Man this year that we were able to weigh in, that the athletes were able to weigh in on a scale.
Yeah, it was a hurricane, right? Because the flights got messed up. Yeah, that's fair enough.
There was a hurricane. So.
It's not a typical situation.
I'll even grant that he made weight for that, even though the only time he's weighed in person in the last year was the Clash, where again he wasn't as big as he is now. He missed by 4 kilos and weighed in 8 kilos late. Fine, you made weight. He then world record attempt in his own gym. World record attempt in his own gym again. Misses weight for the Arnold. World record attempt again in his own gym. Then and there's another one. and this speaks to his character as to whether we trust him or not. There was a little while ago, just when he was starting to get, he was in the middle of kind of the size he was between the Clash and what he is now. Did you see those series of raw, quote unquote, deadlifts that he put up?
Mm-hmm.
There was like a 340 double, a 350, a 360.
Mm-hmm.
If you put that and you put raw next to it, right? This isn't a joke. This isn't a game, right? It's clear to anybody who's watching them, the pattern of the lift, the way he scoots his legs in, you can actually see the outline of his single ply suit underneath. He wore a suit for that little phase of training. So you've just lied about training lifts. So if you're going to lie about training lifts, how am I supposed to take your word for it that your mates are weighing you in your own gym? It just, your credibility just gets, and 2 or 3 of those videos are still up. If you want to go look, yeah, if you want to go looking back at some of them, that one of them is really quite bad. You can look at the single ply video, you can see the outline of where his suit goes, and then you'll see in another one, when he leans over to strap up, you can see the exact same outline underneath his t-shirt. So, I mean, yeah, could he fully peak now? Could he pull 350, 360 raw? Yeah, probably. But he's also not an 80 kilo lifter anymore. He's not even close. So, like, would it be like, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. I said the only way he's making 80 is if he does a protein sparing fast for like 2 weeks. In other words, he eats like 2 steaks a day, like 1,000 calories, salt and water, runs on a treadmill, and he'd have to lose like 3 or 4 kilos of fat and then cut from there. And then that would still be a ridiculous cut. That's the kind of a size of a cut I do. And you can't just decarb and then sit in a sauna or a hot bath for 5 or 6. You'll scratch your eyes out and you'll go insane. Everyone's probably seen the videos of Chris Cyborg, one of the hardest women to ever live, crying her eyes out. Don't think I'm not like that when I'm, 82, 81 kilos and I'm having to put hype songs on just to keep myself under the heat blanket for another, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm used to it now and I can kind of, if it's for a good reason, I can do it. But it's, the reason it annoys me so much, right? And to me, it's so blatant that I can't be the only person that's noticed this. I can't be. I don't have half the talent of this lad. Yeah, I don't have half the talent. I'm a bit old. I'm a bit broken. I don't have his talent. I don't have his genetics. I do have a high level of street smarts and I'm very competitive. But he doesn't need to do this. He could be 4 or 5 kilos lighter, tiny bit leaner, and make 80 no problem, and still probably win OSG and all these top comps. But I just think everything he's done in this last year has an asterisk next to it at best. So we jumped around a little bit here. I mean, what else? I mean, here's one. Just the arrogance of this to me as well. What weight was he when he broke the deadlift for a strongman comp under 90? I mean, I know John
90.4.
It was like 90.3, 90.4. Okay, the promoter says there's a kilo tolerance. Well, I don't give a fuck what the promoter says. How about I run a comp and say there's 10 kilo tolerance? What are you talking about? It's a world record. Like, okay, so he's an 80. You're telling me he can't literally, if you're saying that he's within range of 80, right? That's literally 15 minutes in a hot bath to just take yourself under that. But I honestly think he did a 5 or 6 kilo cut to get to that because he actually looked quite drawn out on the scale at 90.3. He was more drawn out in that weigh-in that was obviously a legit weigh-in than he was for the video weigh-in when he put up saying he was 79.6. So yeah, I think I touched all the points. But to recap, the 3 major comps where he's had to weigh in front of a judge, he missed at the Clash, made weight 8 hours late. Fair enough, we grant him that. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he made weight on video for OSG because I haven't seen the video. But honestly, gun to my head, I'd be like, no, I don't think he did. He missed weight when I was honestly going to leave him alone. If he'd have made weight at Euros, all right, I'd keep a close eye on this record event he's got coming up again in his own gym at the end of September because he's on about pulling 400 under 80, more like 400 weighing 98 or whatever he's gonna weigh. But I was going to leave him alone. But the fact that like he obviously just kept eating and training all the way into this, in my opinion, with no I don't even think he got to. What did he say he got to? Was it 83 or I saw
83.5
another one.
or something like that. 83.5,
I
I think is
don't
what he
even
said.
think he got that. I don't even think he got that. Like he looked a bit sweaty and a bit, but he didn't look. Look, I'm near dead at 83
If
or so.
if it was 83.5, he had room to drop it. That's all. I look at that and I'm like, as someone that's done
He
these
did.
cuts,
He did.
and like if you're at 83.5 and you like
He
know
had
how to
another
do it,
7 or 8 pounds to go. If he indeed weighed that much there, I just
yeah,
like how was it we knew? How was it
yeah,
we knew 2 weeks ago? We knew.
we were
100%.
talking
Like
about this exact
I'd have laid
situation.
anybody any money that it wasn't going to happen. I said
Yep.
Dean's the favourite to win. Although Flash might be having a bit of a
Flash has
resurgence.
Flash has
If
had a
Dean
great
makes a
show so
mistake,
far.
he has his events get a bit weaker
Yeah.
in day 2 and 3. But if Dean makes a couple mistakes, he's got a shot. But yeah, not to get sidetracked, but like, see, another reason why I didn't really want to talk about this publicly, but again, after this, and again, people have been poking fun and kind of just almost pretending that like everything that's happened hasn't happened. I have a lot of respect for Tom Hibbert, the guy. I was in a lot of personal bother, not last Christmas, the Christmas before. The guy's got kids. You know, he messaged me on Christmas Day to talk to me because he kind of sensed I wasn't his client at the time. So I hold a bit of a debt to that guy. He really pulled me out of a spot where I didn't really want to lift anymore or what have you. And he's built an amazing team. Guy's super knowledgeable, amazing businessman. And I do think a lot gets lost in translation and Ben just loosely follows what Tom gives him. Do you know what I mean? So it's like there is a bit of a disconnect there, but at a certain point, you have to be a little bit suspicious. So like if one of my athletes was doing X, Y, Z, like for example, if a young natural kid all of a sudden puts like 40 kilos on his bench in 6 weeks, I'm going to be like, hang on a minute there, Johnny. Are you still natty, son? What are you? Did you get what I'm saying? So I don't know. I don't know how this is going to get handled going forwards with him.
For those of you that don't know a little bit, I want to give a little backstory. Tom Hibbert is an amazing strongman coach. Coaches a bunch of amazing athletes. He also coaches Ben Donen, Dan Benson. Because some people might not know it, especially the American listeners might not know who Tom Hibbert is. But if they don't know who he is and you do strongman, you should really be following him as a coach. So
he might be the best strongman coach in the world. That's how high regard I and many others hold him in.
Yeah, I would say
such a gentleman. So that's why I didn't even want to bring this up, because I feel Tom's stuck in the middle of this. And how much he doesn't or doesn't know. I mean, it might just be a case of he has ultimate trust in his athlete and wouldn't.
Yeah.
But the pure wealth of evidence has been presented in front of me. Do you know what I mean? It does not add up at all. I mean, okay, I'll give you an example. What's going to happen now? I sent you the screenshot there that they invited me to their record day in end of September. Did I show you that?
Oh, you didn't tell me that
yet. Well, it's their CrossFit club that they train in. There's some records day. And he talked earlier in the year about doing 400 under 80. I feel, okay, if nobody wants to do anything now look, as far as I'm concerned, his record should be wiped. He has no credibility. He's not shown a legit weigh-in. He's missed weight 3 times when he's had to weigh in person at these big shows, and it's not been close, right? Plus the fact he's been fresh as a daisy and full as a house on the day when he's done these lifts. Now, am I accusing? Yes, I'm accusing. I'm saying you can be one of the most talented lifters in the world, and you can also be messing about. So I told you I wasn't going to hold back.
Yeah. And I think the frustrating thing, as like a fan of strongman myself, not just an athlete, someone competes against Ben in multiple classes, 80s, 90s, whatever. I'm a fan of the things he's able to do. It's incredible. Like
that's what makes it even more annoying. He's amazing. He is one of the best pound for pound strength athletes in any sport. But Ben, either bring your body weight down so you can make 80, and if you do one of these special event comps, I want to see you on a fucking scale, like legitimately, like, because your trust, I'm sorry, in the community is zero. I may be the only one talking about it, and I know I'm putting you in a bit of a spot here, CJ. Yeah. I know you I was going to talk about this, but you probably didn't think I was going to be so verbose about it, shall we say? But no, it's come to a head where this is just fucking silly now. And there are some other instances of people doing this. They're not quite as solid, so I won't. It's more or less just I have an inkling that people are either phoning their weights in, or I mean, like I've been there at a comp where I turned up at a show, weighed in. It was my first ever world record attempt, where I think it was something like 325 or something. It's hard to imagine that was the world record only like 2 or 3 years ago. There was another big star there, like phoned their weighing in from halfway across the country. I'm like, you what? I was like, I traveled 2 hours to weigh in, then went home to refeed. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was 2 years ago that was happening. So
the biggest thing, I think, there just needs to be more integrity in all of it. There needs to be, it's on the promoters, it's on the athletes as well. It's on every piece of this. If we want this to be taken seriously, there needs to be some serious in weighing in. There's no other sport that allows this. And if we want to get out of like the parking lot competitions, we want to be actually.
Well, it has occasionally happened. It has occasionally happened in powerlifting, but it's not in any big shows. Haven't heard of any messing around for a while. There was some messing around with the Lilla Bridges. There's one of the all-time like equipped Irish legends for one of his last like meets, which was essentially a backyard meet where it's an equipped like all-time record. Like I mean, all time. He was obviously not the weight like he says he was. You know what I mean? So in powerlifting, it's not really happened for a while. The problem is strongman's getting too big. There's too much clout associated with it. There's prize money, there's sponsorships, there's all the advantages to be had of being a name lifter with additional coaching and all the rest of it that goes with it. And there is an incentive for people to bend the rules. I'm sorry. So
another kind of big red flag to me that kind of like shows off. I know we talked about the weigh-ins, the videos, stuff like that. How much these records were broken by out of nowhere. Like we've seen the deadlift record of the 80s. You and me have attempted things. You and me have gone for it. Chipped. We're talking chipped. A couple kilos here, a couple kilos there.
No, there is one. I do believe that 100% believe there was that weight on the bar. He was just
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
One, he is phenomenally good. But two, I just don't quite think he was like at my peak.
I'm not denying that the weight itself was on the bar,
and I'm nowhere near as talented as him. At my peak in the middle of COVID, I did a 340 like RP9. I was probably good that day for 350, 352 without a cut. I think I was sitting about 92, which I've cut from higher than that. That was at my peak strength ever, and I tore my lat 4 days after.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you can't do multiple times a year. You can't compete and then go do that as athletes.
It's very hard. If you do a massive cut, like I'm wiped out for like 2 weeks from that.
Yeah, you're shot. That's the thing. And like, I'm not denying that the weight that was lifted was the weight that was lifted. I don't want that to be misconstrued by any means.
Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out there.
No, you're good. No, you're good. I just wanted to kind of clarify. I'm questionable because it is a lot easier, especially to press at a heavier body weight. You have more mass to sit under a bar. And like, again, the amount that's broken by. So let's say, for example, we are skeptical and asterisks and whatever. It's a giant gap from his lift to the next lifter behind him. We're talking not close. So it's unfair. It's unfair on these records that have been completed to not have definitive answers for future athletes to aim for something.
I honestly don't think that it would take a complete freak to pull 800 pounds on calibrated plates, not fingertip gripping it with a legit lockout. I mean, there is a powerlifter from the UK that but the thing is,
we're talking about also the axle press record. As well.
Oh, the pressing, my mind just gets destroyed. I mean, I find pressing very hard. We talked about my left arm that's 2 inches short. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying with that too. Again, it's a massive jump, and like, can someone get better? Yes, but like usually getting better requires, especially for pressing too, requires more size. I'm a case when it comes to like my pressing getting better. When I started doing more 90s comps and training for Chaos as a 90. My press skyrocketed. So it's possible to skyrocket, but there's no way I could have done that without putting on 10 kilos like I did.
Yeah. You know? Because it's a case of can you level up your, so we'll be a bit technical about deadlift now. So you can get very, very skillful in one of these top end deadlift suits. Like a top end deadlift suit, I'd consider like a double ply velocity, one of the old style metal jacks. The new ones are terrible. I don't know if they've got a new factory making or what have you, but the new ones that they're making are not as good. or the I'll talk to you about the Inza Leviathan that Ben uses, I use. Josh Lancaster's got himself one, and I think there's a couple of other guys have tried it and threw it in the bin because it's very hard to. Oh, trust me, if you've never used a deadlift suit before, do not get one of these. It's like trying to learn to drive in a Formula One car. It's crazy. But can you get 25 kilos out of that? Yes, but the proviso of it is your back has to be overly strong, which mine has to be because I have. I don't know if I told you about it. I essentially have only one knee. One of my knees has like no cartilage in it. It's why I'm a bit part, specialist lifter. I do the lifts I can do, and that's it. I mean, I can squat, but only with knee wraps, and I can't do a lot of volume on it. If you have the kind of arms that, like a Richard Hawthorne, or who's a guy in the UK that's like it, Super Ed, the guy that was in London.
Yep.
His arms come to his knees, right? So if you're a lifter like that, it's phenomenal genetics for deadlifting, but only really raw deadlifting. They won't get much out of the suit because the suit isn't compressing down as much, right? It's why someone like Jamal Browner, people are saying, why doesn't he use a suit? He's tried one. He gets nothing out of it because by the time he gets to the bar, there's no real tension built up. And it's a slightly different strength curve with his body in a slightly different position. And all it does is throw him off. He's not really getting that reverse band effect at the bottom. And so you have your technical skill that you can obviously build over time. You can become more neurally efficient. But like Ben at the back end of 2021, he's about 95, 98% as efficient as he's ever going to get on deadlift. I look back at his technique only a couple of days ago. It's the same as it was now. The level of attack's there. The tightness is there. He's just smaller. The guy's an absolute freak now. I mean, I use the same, one of the same labs as him, and I can talk about this because it's just peptides, like BioLab. Their stuff's phenomenal, and he's sponsored by them. So you best believe he's using the kind of stuff that can, hyperplays him. He's got that look to him already. Do you know what I mean? Where the muscle tends to overhang. If you have that quad that on the side overhangs your knee, where the muscle starts to grow out, and you're 5'8", geez, I mean, you're a lot bigger than 80. You're a lot bigger than 90. I mean, I look like I lift to the average person on the street when I'm walking around. But Ben was honestly making Dean McVie look small a couple of weeks ago. Did you see some of the pictures? Dean was 89. Refed Dean was 89, and
Dean was about 88, 89. Ben had to be 96, 97. I was 94.
Dean is a perfect size for an 80. Dean is a perfect size for an 80.
He walks around about 87, 88.
It's just he gets hurt a little bit on stones, but other than that, all the other if the events line up for him, he's a force. He's like the textbook, kind of guy that you want. If you're any bigger, it's how much muscle mass can you pack on the frame. And really, I shouldn't have been doing this as long as I would. I mean, to be honest, Ben's done me a favor by pulling, 800 pounds and more under 80, because I know I can never do that. I can gimmick I've thought, right, what can I improve? What can I improve? Can I improve my technique, my neural efficiency? It can't get any bigger. I'm using the best deadlift suit ever invented, and my top end is probably 342, maybe not even 345. I've figured it. So there's no point.
And as someone that loves deadlifts, obviously, this whole group is a group of people that love deadlift. I know we've been kind of haven't had Josh in the conversation for a while, but I don't like that there's an asterisk. I don't want to be I don't like the idea of I want to believe it. But at the same time,
I'm a fan of how good the lad is. He's everything you'd want. He's everything you'd want in a strongman. He's charming. He's aesthetic. He's fearless. I mean, what is it? Dad tore as a doctor, and he's like, okay, I'll just start push pressing and I'll do stiff leg deadlifts. The next day, Tez is a doctor and he's in there repping 300 kilo stiff leg deadlifts. You're just you have a little chuckle to yourself, and you're just I'm never going to be that good. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and someone that's dealing with injuries, it's so hard to when I dislocated my knee at OSG, I couldn't think about cutting. I couldn't lose weight. You can't lose weight with these tears.
It's a lot harder. Yeah, because
you can, but it's not good for you. It's
your daily meat is is less. And then, if you try and be in a deficit in that, you're not going to heal. So it's a case of we'll see what happens with me now, because not to go off on too much of a tangent, but I've said to people I'm going to do 90 and possibly some smaller level open masters, like kind of fun comps and stuff like that here in Ireland. And people are, you don't have to cut now. I'm like, no, I'm going to be 102 to come down to 90. I mean, that'll be no, but I will. You wait till you see, like, I'll be a slightly fat 100 cut into 90 for WPC Worlds. But look, I'm not. It's actually funny. Even about 7 months ago, one of the quote unquote top coaches in Ireland said, "Oh, he's not a powerlifter." I was like, okay. So 3 months later, I broke the Masters any fed weight class record by 40 kilos, squat, deadlift, and total. And I did that in I hadn't benched and I hadn't squatted in 3 or 4 years basically. So I've decided to give it a real go and see if I can do something reasonable. Am I ever going to be a world class? I consider a 600 dots to be genuine world class. I'm probably never going to get that good, but I think I can get into the low to mid fives within a couple of years. I understand everything that needs to be done, the level of muscle mass I can put on, the technical skill I can do. It was partly I was almost goaded into it, and then I was trying to ingratiate myself to one of my young lifters again, who was almost being made fun of. Oh, your coach is a deadlift specialist. He's not a power lifter. What does he know? Well, it's we'll see how it turns out. I've got 3 months to prep now for a WPC, and I'm only 2 weeks in, but my body's responded really well already. So instead of just holding myself back, we'll see where I end up. So
and that's just kind of case in point. When you have these injuries come up, you really want to put on more mass, and he just came off an injury. So all these are things, are just questions that don't have answers that we can't 100% prove. But
one thing on its own, right? But everything together just says no. There's no real way around it. And look, I was saying before that his DM was getting filled after the last podcast. Well, I've gone in 10 times as hard. Listen, I've already said I'm a huge fan of Ben's lifting. I've got nothing but respect for Tom Hibbert. But look, if it has to be me that says this publicly, fine, it's me. Because again, the only real affiliation I have is I do have a kit sponsor, but I train myself. I have a couple of people that advise me. I'm kind of an indie guy, be it a loose cannon. I haven't really spoken publicly or said anything controversial for a long time, but this is one of the things that that it just needed to be addressed, because I feel like I'm the kid watching the Emperor. Do you know what I mean? The Emperor. Honestly, that's how I feel. I'm am I the only? I'm thinking I'm losing my mind, but no, just I know people see this as well, but just because it's such a big name, people think they can't say anything. So,
that's it.
I've got nothing to lose. I don't care. So I think I have enough credibility when it comes to being the former record holder. And look, I don't want my record back. But whatever. There's a lad that, what is it? Virgil pulled 342 or something. Anyway, at some comp in Scandinavia there about 6 months ago. All right, it was a bit ropey. It was finger tipped and bumper plates and that, but that lad's capable of 350 plus. Molnar's capable of 350 plus. If he just needs to be a bit heavier, I think. Be about 88, 89, boom, come down, peak his dead. If he could do 350 at 80, I'm not sure whether the twins can get that high. I know they've done 340 and 350 in training with bumper plates when they were a bit over 90. I don't know if they'll get back up to that. But look, there's about 4 or 5 lads capable of beating the number that I did, but nobody's done it yet. Do you get what I mean? I 100% believe that Ben didn't do it legit. So I tell you what, let him. This is not me calling for his records to be deleted, although I honestly think there's more than enough evidence to basically say that none of this shit adds up. He shouldn't be given credit for any of it. Just from now on, if he ever wants to do an 80 comp, one, please don't do it in your own gym, but it looks like he's going to in in 7 or 8 weeks. I'm sorry, mate, but you have to get on a scale, and it has to be completely legitimate. It can't in any way look shady, or just why do you keep doing it in your own gym? Like, for what?
Yeah. I think they have to. The only way I'm going to start like believing any of this at this point, if I'm being honest, is that they get an independent person like flown in, like, and they are the ones weighing them. And it's like live streamed or like something to show a calibrated play. There has to. At this point, I hate that it's coming to this, but like that's the only
has to
way
be said,
that, like,
mate, because it has to be said, because
I can
all
trust this.
put together,
Like,
it's not trustworthy at all.
Yeah, and it's one of those things and he could prove us wrong. I think he has the ability to, based on what he's done. If all this is legit, if all this is legit,
capable. He's 100% capable. Like I said, if he just loses a little bit of total mass, it might even take a little bit of muscle mass off. If he gets himself down to like 9-10% body fat, because he's probably about 12 at the minute, like he can go from 90-91 down to 80. Like he can do that, and 100% he could pull 350 or 360.
It's gonna suck to get down there, but 24-hour refeed, you'll be able to find. You'll be fine though. 24-hour refeed, you're fine.
Supposed to be hard. They're supposed to be hard. They're not.
I agree.
Oh, I'm going to free roll it in my own gym, and just because I've been 80 once in my life, do you know what I mean? Like, you would laugh at the weight I am now. I've still got ab veins, right? I was 79.6 for statics 2 weeks ago. I was 95 before bed just yesterday.
That sounds about right.
I've been refeeding like crazy. I've been deliberately like force feeding myself. Yeah. But I pride myself in, and I have all my old weigh-ins. They're on my Instagram, and I insist that when they're taken, it shows me on the scale. It zooms out, shows me on the scale, so that there's no question.
Well, it's also like, I videotape the whole process personally. I videotape like the full water load. I do it.
Cut. Yeah, show yourself before and after. I mean, that's not proof in itself.
I show each day. Each day, I'm like, here's where I'm at. Yeah. And you can see my body.
You don't have to do that, but it's just, would you not, if you're doing something historical, would you not want it to be put beyond any doubt?
Yeah.
So
personally,
I'll just give you
my personal opinion.
Yeah, the last time I pulled what would have been a world record, but Ben did his 360 a couple of weeks before. And it's actually an interesting story. So I failed at the Arnold. Both me and Rich failed, not under the best circumstances, but we failed. We were given a shot. And Ben was supposed to do his record attempt, I think 2 weeks after that. And then they said he tore his bicep. He said he tore his bicep, and then Tom Hibbert confirmed it. I was like, all right. Shall I have another go? I was like, all right. So ordered myself another set of supplements, right? And so decided I'd give it a week, check my bloods. I was actually not in too bad shape. I'm like, right, I'll do a quick blast. I'm already in good shape. If I have a good setup, might have a shot at it. I think then I start training again. A week later, he's like, oh, I'm okay now. I was like, what? I was like, you said you tore your bicep, not strained it, whatever. And he did. A week later, he did 340, 350, 360. And Hibbert was basically like, do you still want to carry on, see what can be done? I was like, yeah, fuck it. We'll carry on. I think British record was like 338. I was like, right, I'll aim for 340 and see if anything else is there. So I called up a promoter that I knew. He had a powerlifting, like a hybrid kind of powerlifting comp going on, where there was some single lift stuff going on as well. And I said, looking for a spot to do like an under 80 record attempt. I said, it's not going to be world record now. It'll be like British record, and it'll probably be the biggest. I don't even know if I still hold the biggest pound for pound masters lift. I think I do. I think Superhead's second. If you do it on formula, Hainler's got us smashed. But actual like straight pound for pound, I think I've still got the biggest one. But we set it up so that it was very, very strict. We had a competition deadlift bar, rogue plates. We had an exact time we were going to lift. It was 5 p.m. Weigh-in was at 5 p.m. The day before, which I actually like, because you can wake up in the morning and cut weight then, stay up quite late refeeding, another meal in the middle of the night, and then feed all through the day. And I actually had clients all through the day that were lifting. And it was me. I went for a pound for pound challenge against the under 70 Irish champion, who's actually a friend of mine as well. And he's one of my sponsored athletes. So we went head to head, and we had an exact time to lift. We had 10 minutes between lifts. I think I ended up taking a second attempt, and I had Aisha Ullah ref me. You know, she's won Ireland's Strongest Woman how many times? I think she's won Masters Worlds as well, right? And I said, hold me there. Do you know what I mean? Be strict, you know what I mean? Be strict on me. I said, no favors or anything. And the lift's up there. I think it's number 3 on mass cast all time or something. I think it's the biggest Masters lift ever done. They posted it up as. But that was supposed to be like my moment, right? And I just think it got taken from me a little bit. Now I didn't even clock on then that it was all a little bit, do you know what I mean? Asterisk, shall we say? Because I didn't want to think badly. But again, there's more and more and more and more. And the thing that put the nail in the coffin, and I think it was the same we used, was the miss at the Arnold with the axle 2 weeks after, and you were like, hang on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when
that was the first red flag to me. Was I was there at the Arnold.
And I looked back at all his body weight progression and that and all the rest of it. And again, he's even bigger now, and that's why I was like, you know, because you can see the gap in his deadlift suit. His legs are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and he's so. I don't know. I think we've covered everything over this. I'm going around in circles a wee bit with it. But this can't happen in the future. This cannot continue to happen. People like promoters, the athletes need to speak up more. Coaches need to speak up more, because again, me and CJ are not geniuses by any stretch. You know what I'm saying? We can't be the only people seeing this. So, I mean, I do have a unique skill set in that I was invested in something related to Ben, deadlift suits, cuts, and what have you. And I tend to see angle shooting and stuff, but I guarantee you, we're not the only people seeing this. Just a lot of people were just not willing to speak up. So
a lot of people have sent DMs, and I understand people don't want to speak out, but it's definitely not just us. I wish more people would speak up. Just in general in Strongman, I think we covered enough about the Doan and stuff. I wish people would speak up about, like, if they go to a really bad comp and have a bad experience, instead of posting a recap and being like, "Oh, thanks so much for having us out." You know what I mean? Because that happens.
I fucking hate that. Part of
my biggest pet peeve is like.
Can I give you a small example? I'll give you a small recap of what happened at the record attempts with the Arnold. In the amateur, someone broke the world record. Right? They weighed all the plates. Now, number one, it was a stiff bar as well. It was a very good bar, and it's technically a deadlift bar, but it kind of isn't. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Which brand? I can't say the name.
I know the exact brand you're talking about.
It's not a deadlift bar, right? So anyway, so they're using that, and I think it was 21.5 kilos. Anyway, right? It was their version 1. It's since been made a 20 kilo bar. I think their version 1 was over. The plates were weighed, and the plates were 7 kilos over. So it's supposed to be 338.5 on the bar. They took it down to 332. So then it's the next day, and I'm like, okay, are you going to do the same thing again? Oh, no, we've weighed all the plates. They're all grand. Right, I said, what, did you take a belt? Did you take a belt sander to them or what? Or, do you know what I mean? So, and then, I was like, right, I want 339. I come out and there's just 820 plates on there. So they couldn't even be bothered putting on what I wanted. So it's a kilo over what I wanted, and it's probably 7 kilos over on a stiff bar. Now, what does that equate to? It's like 12.5 kilos harder, right? So biggest moment of my life. Oh, and just to backtrack on that, I was supposed to be, now I don't blame the person that bumped us from, it was supposed to be me and Molnar in the main event. It was kind of like the old lion on the way out. It was supposed to be my last comp versus Rich Molnar. He's got a bum knee, but he's still going to like take me on. And he was looking like he was going to, you know, pull a massive weight. But again, his cut was so big, it completely fried him. I think he failed 320. Just give me There's a list of people that have tried to come down from over 90 and fucked it. Like you tried, and it really hurt you. Molnar tried, Tim tried, even though his twin brother actually got the record that day, but he was completely fried from the cut. The Italian lad, what's his name? The tall, lanky lad. He tried, but got smashed by a cut. I'm one of the few people that's done a massive cut and been near 100%. So that was a complete shambles. I ended up actually lifting before the doors opened for main admission. So I mean, I could go on about this for hours, but I was essentially bullied. I was bullied that day. It was crazy. We ended up having to lift way earlier than we should have done. The weights were wrong. We weren't even told the order we were lifting in. It was basically like they just didn't want to give the money away. is what happened.
Yeah, this all comes back to like we need higher standards from every level of this sport if we want to be taking if we want it to be as serious as we take it, you know. Because promoters need to hold themselves to higher standards, athletes need to speak up and hold themselves at a higher standard, and athletes need to hold the promoters to that standard too. If you have a bad experience, say something. You have.
I think there are some that are. Would you not agree that? No, I don't see eye to eye with Luke Davies on everything, and Rhiannon was my coach, and we didn't have the best part into our relationship. But I saw her at Statics, and I saw her give her a big hug, and I like had a bit of a laugh and a joke with her. I think they're doing the best job out of anyone pretty much. That stuff they're doing is phenomenal. People need to look at what they're doing and essentially copy paste as best they can. As far as I'm concerned, what they're doing at the minute is amazing.
I would say that show was near perfect for any show I've ever done, especially at a high level. There were small things that I brought up that were like looked over, but if I can nitpick a show, it's a great show. You know what I mean? It's one of those things I'm like, they took my like, hey this, hey that, could have been like this much better if you, and they okay, we didn't think of that. We'll make sure.
You know what? They'll do that next time. They'll do that next time because they know you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to be like, oh, this hurt X, Y, or Z. I was like, hey, this could have been the most, and this little tiny stuff that as a spectator you wouldn't have noticed, but coming from the athlete side, and I'm not opposed to telling a promoter that. And I wasn't trying to be like, oh, you ruined the show, No, I'm saying like this could have been better for the athletes. Because my goal as like an athlete and as like someone that like I helps run shows and judges shows and commentates shows is to give these experience that these athletes deserve. And so like I feel like I always come from a stance of how do we make this better for the athletes? Period. Like doesn't even have to be my class. It could be like, you know, come down to like the 64 women all the way up to the open men. Like how do we make this sport better and how do we hold people accountable to keep progressing and making it better for the athletes who actually put themselves on the line? Like we are all one lift away from like retiring because the weights we lift are crazy. Like no matter how many times you've done a lift, like it can go wrong. Like I lifted, what was it? Before Chaos, I did a frame pickup. I've done like 500 times. You know, it wasn't even like heavy. It was like 495, 500 pounds. And I tweaked my back a little bit. I was like, oh crap. So that's not a heavy lift for me, but it's like even the light.
Maybe you took it for granted, I often find everything we do. It's the light weights that hurt you sometimes. I told you before I tore my lat on a lockdown. I'd done 340, like clean as a whistle, probably the best lift I've ever done in my life. 4 days later on a speed day, it was like 260, ripped my lat clean off. And actually the video is pretty. Do you ever see that video? I'm literally sat in the corner for 5 minutes crying because I knew how bad it was. I tried to pick up an empty barbell, couldn't pick up the bar, and I was like, oh shit, it's the. And normally it takes a while for the blood to appear on a. No, there was blood,
but it was red right away. Yeah, it was purple. But like that's what I mean by each athlete that competes, each athlete that goes out there, whether it be a local show, the world's level, somewhere in between, you are putting some kind of your health on the line, and like very few, if any, shows offer any compensation if you get hurt. You know what I mean? So we need to hold that to a standard too, in my opinion.
Yeah. It'd be you'd do well to try and pitch that to an insurance company, though. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, right. You try your best.
By the way, we've got this strongman comp, and like, listen, someone would probably could run. Again, look, you know, I run crazy algorithms and stuff for blackjack, and something like that could be worked out, but it almost would be. I think it would be prohibitively expensive to have a insurance.
Well, I'm not saying it has to have that, but I'm saying like the fact that we should expect higher standards. Not weights changing, not misloading, not this, not that.
Just
at the level. I'm not saying we need something. I'm saying we need to be
every precaution needs to be taken. So I mean, my opener at did you see my opener at Statics was misloaded, and I was telling them no, that's wrong, and they were like no lift. I was like no, it's wrong. Like, do you know what I mean? So and log press is super difficult for me. One, because I can't push press because of my right knee, and then I can't take an uneven grip on the fixed handles with my left arm that's shorter. So just log is an absolute nightmare. So it's just a case of put up a log to where it puts me hopefully within touching distance on the deadlift, and I managed to do enough. So but that was a shame actually that Statics wasn't as well represented. I think it had the potential to be quite a big and quite a really fun event, and it was Yeah, because you know how many there ended up only being 5 lads in my flight. It was supposed to be
Yeah,
like
there's a lot of there's a
9
lot
or
of pullouts
10.
in that show.
Yeah, Ben Doney's, what is it? Matteo pulled out. I don't know why. Was it
Schultz.
the American that was coming? Andrew Schultz, yeah, was going to come over. I think he had a problem getting the time off or whatever. Yeah, there was another couple of decent like deadlifters for me to go against, but yeah, it was a shame because that is my last ever under 80 comp. And all right, I finished with a world title, but it fell a bit flat for me. Everyone was like, "Why are you upset?" I was like, that's kind of how I am. I'd rather come third to Donan and a couple of other lads legitimately than win a comp that was almost like a club comp per se. So that's why I just went for broke on my second deadlift. I just went straight for the record because I knew I'd done enough for my opener. But yeah. So
Josh, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just circling back, and we've ran a little bit long, so I want to kind of wrap it up. I think we kind of hammered home our point about that stuff. But I think one key takeaway is if you're invested in strongman on any level, the lowest up to the highest, is just speak up and kind of make your voice be heard, because especially in America, where I can mainly speak for, no matter if you're a novice or you're at the top level of the amateur, you are the money that's going into the sport. So they need you. You're what's funding the sport. So speak up. If you don't like a show, say, you don't have to be a dick about it, but just say you didn't have a great experience. And because I think what I see with a lot of promoters is they're not necessarily aware that their shows suck, because everyone thinks everyone DMs and gossips and stuff. Like when this Donan stuff came in, I got 20 plus DMs about this stuff, like him not making weight again.
Could I just address that 1 second? Just 1 second. Sorry to interrupt.
1 second.
Look,
1 second.
if you're gonna
hold
DM
on,
either
Tom.
the show,
Hold on, Tom. What like my grand scheme is, and I'll let you kind of close out, is just
sorry, mate.
Post about it, talk about it, and you are the voice of the sport. So what were you gonna say, Tom?
I was gonna say, look, you're obviously gonna get some DMs. I'm probably gonna get some DMs. I think CJ's been the most level-headed one on this. I've got a little bit passionate, but I think I got my point across. I came with the intention of like being professional and respectful, and get my point across. But I wasn't gonna hold back. I was gonna say what I think. Don't be sending any ad hominem attacks to either of the lads or me. Stick to the facts. If you have a problem with anything that we've said, come up with an argument to counter what I've said, because essentially everything there I've said is factual. I've given you dates, I've given you times, I've told you the size it was, I've told you what's happened going into it, and everything collectively together does not add up. If that got put in front of a court of experts, a bunch of strongman experts, they'd all come to the same conclusion. So no blatantly slagging me off. Look, I already acknowledge that Ben is a far superior athlete to me. I'm a huge fan, but just if he's going to do 80 and he wants to continue to, because there's talk of like under 80 goat. I'm like, I'm sorry, but you can't be called that, and you need to erase all this doubt there is, and there's huge doubt over a lot of stuff you've done. Because at best he's a tweener at the minute. He'd have to gain another good few kilos to be a big enough 90 to really compete with the top 90 lads. I mean, who knows? He might win in the next couple of days in the 90, but he's just a little bit down on the top 90 lads. But he really has to commit to being a little bit lighter, and so he can actually make weight. And if he's going to do these special events, it has to be beyond any question whatsoever, because he's eroded any trust he has with me and with a lot of people that, like you say again, will talk in DMs, but won't say it publicly. So I'll say just stick to the facts. No ad hominems. Stick to the facts. You want to debate with me? That's fine.
Yeah. And I'll just say one more thing. I think as a sport, and I'm not trying to name anybody, we just need to have from every level the proper integrity, because we all, again, most of us aren't doing this, making a living off of this. I don't think anybody really is at our level at any weight class division, but there is money getting involved in the sport, and there needs to be standards, there needs to be integrity. That comes from promoters, that comes from athletes, that comes from weigh-ins, that comes from everything. And I think we need to step that game up, and we need to stop getting rid of this possibility of doubts from anybody, and we need to have that as the normalcy, not just a one-off where we praise the fact that, oh, they were really good about weigh-ins, oh, they ran a great show. That should be the normal thing, in my opinion.
100%.
I agree.
And I don't think, I mean, obviously Ben, and we're gonna finish after this, but Ben is just what the talking point is right now because he's breaking these records and he's the guy doing it. I think it's for everything, any record, there needs to be legitimacy to it across the board. It's not Ben because we're in his class or whatever. It's anyone. So if someone's coming along with records, you need to be
It's so big now. Yeah, it's the clout alone. I mean, there's probably only Rhiannon and maybe one or two others that literally are making a living wage from their prize money from these comps. But indirectly, the amount of clients I've gotten through my small accomplishments the last couple of years, they've paid my bills essentially. I wouldn't have had a bunch of the clients I had if I hadn't raised my profile to this extent. So there's money to be made indirectly through accomplishments and clout. And if people can cut corners and if people can do this and that to raise their profile for clicks and clout and indirect money that can be earned through sponsorships and, you know, coaching Nick and a crew and stuff like that. Right. Like you say, things have to be held to a higher standard. I mean, there's been talk of all these, like a proper website being put together by various guys, the equivalent of an open powerlifting for Strongman. The closest thing to that is Luke and Rhiannon's website. They just have to start saying no to records, I'm afraid. Or Luke has to get together and find a panel of like 5 or 6 people to look at something and be like yes or no. Do you get what I mean? Almost a little Supreme Court for, you know. And if anything's under question, if there's not a legit weigh-in. Sorry, mate, carry on.
No, and the biggest thing here, if you're an athlete and you have nothing to worry about, why would you even care if this happened? So I'm just saying, I think it's a great idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we covered a lot. I know there was more I wanted to cover today, but maybe we'll do it again and touch on some other topics. But you know, obviously we kind of got sidetracked on all that. But I really appreciate you guys coming on, taking the time. Tom, I know
mate.
I know it's the middle of the night where you're at. CJ.
No, it's grand. It's only 2:15. First client isn't until 10 a.m. So,
but
we'll have you guys to do it again. I'm not sure how this will come across. I'll either be dismissed as a hater or people will really listen to what I'm saying and look to move forward with this. I hope Ben does because he's obviously going to hear about this and a lot of people are involved with him. He does have the potential to be the lightweight GOAT. He is that good, but just you need to step your game up, son. As far as I'm concerned, it's not honourable enough what you've been doing. You need to, in all aspects of it, you need to. If you're going to be the GOAT, act like the GOAT. So right. I think I'll leave it at that.
Guys, I appreciate it. I really appreciate the time.
No,
your guys' Instagram names are on here. Be sure to follow these guys on everything, and thank you guys so much for the time.
Cheers, man.
Cool.